And now, let's play...
How ironic is that?
Yes, I'm going to outline some situations, and all you have to do is to tell me how ironic they are and why. OK.
Is it out of 100?
No, you can just give me a sort of sense of just exactly how ironic you think they are.
I'm just worried about how we grade the irony.
I would say shiny.
Shall I tell you?
Down to rusty.
Shall I tell you what the shades of irony supposedly are? Because I think what we're getting at is the word irony is often weirdly misused. People say, ironically, he wasn't there, or something.
Yeah.
You know, just, you mean,
Invisible Man.
Yeah. So, there's verbal irony.
He was there.
Verbal irony, the opposite of what's as clear as mud, or, oh, this is a fine state of affairs, or whatever, which is slightly less than sarcasm. That's verbal irony. There's comic irony. Dr. Strangelove, gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room, for example, is a kind of ironic remark. That's considered generally ironic. Dramatic irony.
Little does he know that I'm
Yeah, the audience knows Oedipus is the very murderer that he's hunting, as it were. Sort of dramatic irony.
As in dive thoughts down to my soul, here Clarence comes.
That's just the kind of thing of Richard III and others. Yes, very good.
Ladies and gentlemen, an all-round entertainer.
And then there's Socratic irony, which is pretending to be dumber than you are, like a sort of... like Socrates, or like Columbo, Lieutenant Columbo of the greatest ever detective. Oh, God, isn't that the greatest ever show?
Like Socrates or Lieutenant Columbo.
Yeah. And I would be hard put to say...
I know they both did that, but beyond that,
I'd be hard put to say which was greater. I do happen to think Columbo is the greatest television series ever made.
Do you know, Stephen, I absolutely agree with that.
I'm glad to hear you.
I once spent a long night with David Baddiel having an argument about whether Columbo had one eye or not.
Right, Peter Falk, you mean? Yeah.
Well, no.
Or Columbo.
This was the debate. My argument was that Peter Falk does indeed have one eye, but in Columbo, that eye plays the part of a real eye.
Yes! I think there's truth in that.
Yeah.
I absolutely
Columbo
agree.
has two eyes.
That's how good he was, I agree.
And what... How did this argument go on for so long? Was it like Women in Love?
Dave wasn't having it. He wouldn't have it.
He wouldn't have it?
No.
Were you wrestling naked in front of a fire? Women in Love?
Well, that was how we had to decide it in the end. We couldn't find a coin.
No.
So what is this ironic? John Kendrick was an American sea captain who put into Honolulu Harbour in 1794 and was killed by the cannon which was fired to salute him. Now... we have this down as situational and arguably comic irony, though the audience was very sympathetic, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
That's fairly ironic.
It's pretty ironic, isn't it? We'll
I
accept
think it's
that
almost
as irony.
spangly. Yeah. That's almost up in the spangly section.
Yes, yes. Well, now, what about Clement Vallandigham, who was an Ohio lawyer who died in 1871 while defending a man who was accused of murder during a barroom brawl? Now, in order to show the jury how the pistol might have gone off accidentally, this lawyer grabbed a gun, put it in his pocket, and reenacted the events as he imagined them. And sure enough, the pistol went off.
He was shot by a cannon?
No, the pistol went off, and he was killed by the gun in exactly the way that he was describing. So, just before he died from his own wounds, his client was acquitted.
And the good thing is his client didn't have to pay.
No, exactly. It's kind of perfect. Situational irony, I think that would be called. But now, what about this Lincoln? Abraham Lincoln was shot while sitting in Ford's Theatre, while Kennedy was shot while sitting in a Ford Lincoln. And there are many other coincidences like that. But these are that's just simply coincidence, not irony.
Reagan was shot in Washington, and Washington was shot with a ray gun.
If only that were true. Oh. It would almost be worth inventing a time machine and going back with a ray gun just to do that.
It's true, but nobody knew what a ray gun was then.
No.
So they just went, what's that?
There you are. Now, I have a picture. Is this ironic? Tell me if this is there something ironic about that? That you basically cut all the wool off a sheep and then knit it together again and put it back on. Yeah.
It's more ironic that we look at it and go, ah, and then go,
Mint
I saw an advert for a meat supplier, and it said, caring for pork from farm to fork. And I just thought, there's a certain point where you just go, you're not really caring.
Not really caring.
I wouldn't call that caring when you're just going...
It's amazing.
With the eyeballs to make sausages.
All right.
I hang stuff off the side.
I'm going to come across another ironic... This is rather ironic. In 1989, in America, convicted murderer Michael Godwin had his sentence reduced to life imprisonment after 5 years awaiting the electric chair. But he was then accidentally electrocuted while sitting naked on a steel lavatory seat in his cell in Colombia. He was trying to fix his television set. He bit into a wire and was electrocuted. That is a kind of cosmic irony, really.
Yeah, that's not irony, that's God's will.
It's God's will. I think you may well be right. That's irony for you. The things we call irony often really aren't that ironic. Ironically. Or not.